They called it the Ghost of Sol. Commander Kalen Reyes watched the nebula boil on the main screen of the UNSV Venture. It was a storm of ionized hydrogen and shattered starlight, a cosmic wound known to cartographers as the Tartarus Maw. Here at the edge of chartered space, his survey vessel was a mote of dust caught in a god's breath. The stakes were simple: find the source of the anomaly, or turn back with empty hands and a drained fuel budget. Failure meant another year of writing grant proposals instead of history. He tasted the bitter tang of overbrewed coffee, a familiar anchor in the sterile, recycled air of the bridge. For 6 weeks, they had chased a gravitational whisper, a ghost signature, that defied all known physics. It was a pattern that hummed with a forgotten cadence, a mathematical ghost story told in the language of space-time. Deep within the Maw-sleeping arrays of impossible scale were dreaming of a time before the galaxy knew anything but human ambition. The sigil of a forgotten age had ghosted across their deep-range scanners, once for less than a second, a circle enclosing a balanced scale. Anything new, Pathfinder Kalen asked, his voice low. The ship's AI manifested as a cool blue pillar of light to his left. Negative, Commander. Gravitational distortions remain constant. The anomaly's source is still masked by the nebula's EM interference. Pathfinder's tone was a placid sea of logic, a stark contrast to the swirling chaos on the view screen. Probability of a natural phenomenon remains at 2%. Probability of a pre-diaspora artifact is now 97.3%. A rumor made real a legend, given weight. Lieutenant Eva Rostova, his tactical officer, shifted in her seat. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the console. That 97.3% is what worries me. Old tech is unstable. A war-era weapon system going critical could vaporize us before we even see it. She was a pragmatist, a woman who trusted armor plating and kinetic barriers, not myths. Or it could be the single greatest discovery in human history, countered Dr. Eris Thorne from his science station. The old historian's eyes gleamed with a zealot's fire, his face illuminated by cascading data streams. The legends call it the Anchorage, a sanctuary, a fortress, a library. Some texts even refer to it as a saint ship, a vessel that passed judgment. Kalen held up a hand. Let's not write the press releases just yet, Eris. All we have is a ghost. But even he could feel the pull of it, the academic hunger to touch a genuine piece of the lost age. An era when humanity had built wonders and horrors with equal fervor before contracting into scattered stellar nations. A low chime echoed across the bridge. It was the long-range proximity alert. Rostova's head snapped toward her display, her expression hardening. Commander, we have contacts, multiple contacts. Closing fast from the nebula's edge. IFF is chaotic. Looks like a scrapper fleet. The vultures were circling. How did they find us? Kalen demanded the warmth of discovery, instantly replaced by a chilling dread. The Tartarus Maw was supposed to be empty. They likely tracked our gravimetric wake, Pathfinder stated calmly. The signature of our vessel's drive, though faint, would be a clear trail in this otherwise turbulent region. There are 7 ships, Commander, reading cobbled-together drive systems, mismatched weapon emplacements. Low grade, but numerous. On screen, Kalen ordered. The main view split, showing 7 ugly asymmetrical vessels barreling toward them. They were brutal things, patchworks of stolen hulls and oversized engines bristling with poorly maintained cannons. A pirate fleet drawn by the scent of a prize. A civilian freighter captain hauling grain from a farming moon adjusted the audio pickup for his daughter's message. Tell Grandpa we miss him. The small girl on the screen set her voice a tinny echo across the light years. And tell him the stories are true. The stars are getting brighter." The captain smiled, a tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek as he watched the distant, beautiful chaos of the Tartarus maw, unaware of the beasts that stirred within it. "They're hailing us." Rostova reported, her voice tight. "Broadcasting on an open channel. No encryption," arrogant Aris muttered. "Put them through," Kalen said, standing straighter. His uniform suddenly felt too formal a scholar's robes at a back-alley brawl. The face of a grizzled man with a scarred lip and a cybernetic eye filled the screen. He sat on a command throne made of scrap metal, a sneer twisting his features. "Survey vessel Venture." The man growled, his voice like grinding metal. "I am Warlord Kor. You are trespassing in my salvage claim. That little ghost you're hunting belongs to me. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. My boys will take what we want, and will consider leaving you the scraps. The law of the jackal. Writ large in fire." Kalen's mind raced. The Venture was a science ship. It had defenses, but they were meant to deter pirates, not fight a pitched battle against a small fleet. Their only advantage was precision and a superior AI. Warlord Kor Kalen replied, his tone even. "This is a lawfully registered exploration vessel of the Althosian Alliance. This sector is unclaimed. You have no authority here." Kor laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Authority? My authority is in the barrels of these cannons. Last chance, Commander. Power down, or we turn your pristine little science project into a cloud of expanding vapor." "His threat assessment is credible," Pathfinder noted with unnerving serenity. "Our combat simulation models predict a 91.4% chance of catastrophic failure if we engage them directly." Rostova swiveled in her chair. "Commander, we can't fight them, and we can't outrun them in this nebula. They'll tear us apart." Her gaze was firm. "But we can't let them have the artifact." Kalen looked from the scrapper fleet to the swirling heart of the maw, where the ghost waited. He had come here seeking knowledge, a key to humanity's past. Now he was its unlikely guardian, caught between scavengers and a mystery that could rewrite civilization. The weight of that responsibility settled on him heavy and cold. The choice was made in silence. Pathfinder Kalen said, his voice ringing with newfound resolve. "Find me a path. Take us deeper into the nebula. Use every trick you have. We're not giving them a thing." "Acknowledged, Commander," the AI replied. A flicker of something that might have been digital approval pulsed through its light column. "Executing evasive maneuvers. I suggest all crew members secure themselves. Turbulence will be significant." The Venture lurched, its advanced engines pivoting to drive them into the densest part of the storm. On the tactical display, the 7 scrapper ships altered course, their engines flaring as they gave chase. The hunt had begun. They were no longer scientists. They were keepers of a secret, fleeing from the wolves at their heels. The ship bucked as it plunged into a river of charged particles. Consoles sparked, and alarms blared a frantic chorus. Kalen gripped his command chair, the hum of the deck plates a living thing beneath his feet. He was a historian, a man of books and quiet archives, now commanding a desperate flight through a cosmic graveyard. A ledger of choices written in plasma and gravity. "Their targeting solutions are a mess in here," Rostova reported, her fingers flying across her console. "They're firing blind, but they're blanketing the area. It's only a matter of time before they score a lucky hit." The ship shuddered again as a magnetic pulse washed over them, a near miss. "Eris, what can you tell me about the anchorage's defenses?" Kalen asked, keeping his eyes fixed on the chaotic view screen. "If it's a warship, it has to have something. The texts are fragmented." Eris called back. his voice strained against the ship's groaning. They speak of it not as a weapon, but as a judge. It mirrored transgressions and balanced the accounts. It was a vessel of absolute unyielding law. It never fired first. A weapon that didn't fire first was little help to them now. The scrappers were not known for their adherence to galactic law. Their philosophy was simpler. What they could take was theirs. The venture was a lock, and the anchorage was the treasure chest. They would break the lock to get the prize. "Commander, the anomaly's source is resolving," Pathfinder announced, its voice cutting through the din. "We are approaching the gravitational epicenter." Visuals coming online now. The swirling gases on the main screen parted like a curtain, and there, hanging in the void, was the ghost. It was immense, a structure, easily 100 kilometers long, shaped like a massive obsidian needle. Its surface was a complex lattice of geometric patterns and deep-cut channels, scarred by eons of micrometeoroid impacts. No lights shone from it. No energy signatures bled from its hull. It was a dead thing, a fossil of a forgotten god. And it was beautiful. Awe silenced the bridge crew. Even Rostova stared, her tactical concerns momentarily forgotten. The scale of it was impossible. Pre-diaspora humanity had built this. A civilization that had shattered itself into 1,000 pieces had once possessed the power to forge monoliths like this. A promise of greatness drowned in the ashes of the past. "It's a city," Reese whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "No, a temple, a courthouse built to span the stars." The scrapper fleet burst through the nebula behind them, their weapons already glowing with stored energy. Kor's sneering face appeared on a secondary screen again, uninvited. "Nowhere left to run, little ship. Look at that prize, I'll be rich beyond measure. Hand it over." "Pathfinder, any signs of activity from the artifact?" Kalen asked, ignoring the warlord. "Negative, Commander. It remains inert. Scans show dormant power conduits of unimaginable capacity, but they are cold. The structure is for all intents and purposes dead." "Then we have to wake it up," Kalen said. Rostova looked at him as if he were insane. "Commander, we don't know what it is. Waking it could be a death sentence for this entire sector." "It's a death sentence if we don't," Kalen shot back. "Those scrappers will tear it apart for scrap, and whatever knowledge is inside will be lost forever. Find me a docking port, a signal array, anything that looks like an interface point. An act of faith in an age of rust." Pathfinder's light pulsed. "Scanning. I have identified a single location that matches the configuration of a pre-diaspora universal docking collar. It is located in a shielded recess along the primary axial trench. However, it appears to be sealed. The scrappers are in firing range," Rostova warned. "Their main batteries are charging. Get us to that collar," Kalen ordered. "Eva, give me everything you've got in defensive screens. Eris, be ready. You're our best hope for figuring out how to talk to this thing." The Venture dove towards the obsidian giant, a minnow swimming towards a dead leviathan. Plasma bolts from the scrapper fleet stitched across the void around them, some splashing harmlessly against the Venture's straining shields. The impacts felt like hammer blows, each one a countdown to their destruction. The small ship raced along the colossal trench, the sheer walls of the anchorage rising like cliffs on either side. A race between the curious and the cruel. They reached the recess, a vast cavern carved into the black hull. At its center was a circular airlock hundreds of meters in diameter, etched with the same balanced scale sigil they'd seen on the sensors. It was sealed tight, an impassive metal face. "Shields at 40%, Rostova yelled. "Another volley like that, and we're finished." "Pathfinder, can you interface with the door controls?" Kalen pressed. "There are no conventional controls, Commander. The system is quantum locked. brute force decryption is inadvisable. The feedback could atomize our ship's computers. Eris Kalen pleaded, his hope dwindling. Eris was pale, his eyes wide as he stared at the sigil on the screen. It's a court seal. In the old law, such a seal could only be opened by a petitioner. It requires a plea, a statement of intent. Kor's voice boomed over the comms again. Your shields are failing. This is your final warning. Surrender the prize, a memory of law. In a lawless place, a plea? Kalen asked, grasping at the straw. What kind of plea, I don't know. Aris said frantically, searching his data slates. The records are just fragments, poems. It speaks of rightful cause and balanced intent. It's not a password, it's a moral imperative. The ship screamed as a plasma bolt clipped the port engine nacelle. Fire suppression systems hissed to life. The lights flickered, and the bridge was plunged into emergency red lighting. Shields are gone, Rostova said, her voice grimly calm. We're defenseless. Kalen looked at the impassive seal, then at the ravenous fleet preparing to deliver the final blow. He had come seeking history, and found himself at its mercy. He thought of the stories of the anchorage as a judge. It didn't respond to force, it responded to intent. He opened a direct channel to the docking seal, configuring it to broadcast a simple tight beam transmission. Pathfinder's voice cut in. Commander, this is not a recognized communication protocol. What are you attempting? Making a plea? Kalen answered. He took a breath, centering himself. He was not a warrior. He was not a king. He was a scholar. His only authority came from the truth. He began to speak, his voice steady, despite the tremor in his hands. He didn't speak to Kor or to his crew, but to the dead ship before him. This is Commander Kalen Reyes of the survey vessel Venture. We are petitioners. We come seeking knowledge, not conquest. We are threatened by those who would see you destroyed for parts who value greed over history. We claim sanctuary under the old law. We ask for your judgment. He offered the truth as his only key. For a moment, nothing happened. The scrapper fleet moved in for the kill, their weapon ports glowing like angry red eyes. Kor's laughter echoed in the silence. Then a low hum vibrated through the Venture's hull, a resonance that came not from their own engines, but from the giant outside. The balanced scale sigil on the airlock began to glow with a soft white light. A deep mechanical groan echoed through space as the colossal iris began to open. The anchorage was awake, and it had answered. The bridge of the Venture was silent save for the crackle of dying fires and the deep resonant hum of the awakened artifact. The colossal airlock before them was now a gaping maw of perfect darkness, an invitation into the heart of the machine. The scrapper fleet had paused its attack, their bloodlust momentarily checked by sheer, unadulterated déjà. Shock. On the secondary screen, Warlord Kor's jaw hung open. A question answered with a miracle. Report. Kalen said, his voice a hoarse whisper. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. The artifact is emitting a low-level energy field, Rostova said, her tone laced with awe. It's warm. Power conduits are charging all over the structure. Not weapons, Commander. Something else. Life support. Internal lighting. It's waking up like a city. Not a battleship. Pathfinder. What is our status? Port engine is offline. The AI stated its calm. A strange comfort. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 5 have been sealed. Life support is stable. Our offensive and defensive capabilities are 0. They were alive, but crippled, floating before an open door into the unknown. while a fleet of killers looked on. Kalen knew their reprieve was temporary. Kor's shock would soon curdle back into greed. "Take us inside," Kalen commanded. Slowly. The Venture limped through the vast opening its hull, scraping against the edges of the ancient dock. As they cleared the threshold, the immense iris began to close behind them, shutting out the nebula and the scrapper fleet. They were sealed inside, entombed within the ghost. The interior of the docking bay was cavernous, large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of the Venture. Soft, indirect light emanated from the walls, revealing a space that was impossibly clean, untouched by the passage of millennia. The sanctuary of saints was real. A young ensign on a Hegemony patrol cruiser marked a priority update on his navigation chart. The long-range sensor post at the edge of the Tartarus Maw, a forgotten relic itself, had just reported a massive directed energy event. His orders were clear: report any pre-diaspora activity directly to the sector command. He typed the message, his fingers tracing the legal codes that authorized immediate fleet mobilization to secure any such discovery. The law, after all, was the ultimate authority. "Commander, the scrappers are cutting through the outer door." Rostova reported her console, now displaying the external sensor feed. "Their greed outweighs their fear. Let them." Kalen said, his attention fixed on the interior of the bay. "Pathfinder, can you find a control system?" "An interface already located." "Commander," the AI replied. "A single access node is extending from the bay wall. It appears to be compatible with our external link systems. It is offering a connection." "Accept it," Kalen ordered without hesitation. A holographic interface bloomed into existence in the center of the Venture's bridge. It was not a complex wall of text or a disembodied voice. It was a perfect three-dimensional representation of the balanced scale rotating slowly in the air. Beneath it, a single line of pristine ancient text appeared. Aris leaned forward, his breath fogging the air. "I can translate that. It says, 'Present your ledger. A test of worth, not of strength.' Ledger, what does it want? Our ship's logs?" Rostova asked. "I think it's more than that," Kalen mused, staring at the glowing symbol. "The anchorage is a judge. It needs a case to rule on. It wants to know who we are, what we've done, what we intend to do. It wants our history. A dangerous proposition," Pathfinder noted. "Our logs contain sensitive information. Tactical weaknesses, personnel files, alliance secrets." Kalen shook his head. "Transparency. That's what it responded to before. It's not looking for secrets, it's looking for honesty. It wants to weigh us." He looked at Aris. "The legends. They said it remembered by ledgers, didn't they?" Aris nodded slowly. "And it taught by numbers. The old law was built on mathematics, on the elegant, impartial truth of an equation. It was a system that could not be swayed by rhetoric or passion, only by balanced accounts. This was the core of its being, the fact that separated it from every other power in the galaxy. The Saint ship teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. It did not command it accounted. A morality of mathematics, Pathfinder Kalen said, his decision made. Compile our complete service record, every mission, every decision I've made as commander, every log entry, every crew commendation and reprimand. Leave nothing out. Add to it our current situation, our flight from the scrappers, our plea for sanctuary. Present it all as a single, unredacted file. Commander, I must advise against this, the AI cautioned. The potential for misuse of this data is astronomical, and the potential for understanding is infinite, Kalen countered. This is not a negotiation. It is a deposition. We are submitting our testimony. Do it. Acknowledged, Pathfinder stated. The light of its column flickered as it accessed and compiled terabytes of data. Transmitting the ledger. A stream of pure data visible as a shimmering river of light flowed from the Venture's bridge and into the holographic scale. The scale began to tilt first one way, then the other, as if weighing the sum of their existence. The hum in the bay intensified, and the lights throughout the vast structure brightened. On the outside, the scrappers had finally breached the outer door. Their ships poured into the docking bay, their weapons hot. "They're through," Rostova shouted. "They're firing." But the plasma bolts never reached the Venture. They splashed against a newly formed wall of golden energy, a shield that had sprung into existence around their small ship. The anchorage was protecting them. Kor's voice, now laced with fury, and a hint of panic, screamed over the comms. "What is this trickery? Tear that little ship apart." The accounts were being settled. The holographic scale on the bridge stopped moving. It settled into a perfect, unwavering balance. The ancient text below it changed. Eris translated his voice, trembling. It says, "Ledger accepted. Petitioner status confirmed. Sanctuary is granted. State your plea." They were in. They were protected. They had been found worthy, at least for now, but the question remained. They had asked for sanctuary, and it had been given. But what did they ask for now? What was their plea? Were they here to hide or to act? "What do we do?" Commander Rostova asked. Her gaze fixed on the protected view of the enraged scrapper fleet. "It's waiting for your command." Kalen looked at the scale, a symbol of perfect justice. He thought of Kor's brutality, the law of the jackal. The anchorage had mirrored transgressions, Eris had said. It had balanced the accounts. It was not a weapon to be wielded, but a law to be enacted. His plea would not be for destruction. It would be for justice. A justice forged in light and law. "Our plea," Kalen began speaking to the holographic interface, "is for the law to be upheld. The law of salvage is clear. It does not apply to sites of historical or cultural significance. The law of space is clear. Unprovoked assault is piracy. The scrapper fleet under the command of Warlord Kor has broken these laws. They have acted with greed and violence. We do not ask for their destruction. We ask for their actions to be accounted for." He chose his words, carefully echoing the language of the anchorage itself. He was not giving a fire command. He was filing a legal motion. The scale pulsed once brightly. The text changed again. "Plea accepted. Commencing adjudication." A network of brilliant blue light spread from the anchorage, enveloping the scrapper ships. It was not an attack. It was a scan, an impossibly detailed analysis that stripped them bare. On the Venture's screens, they saw everything. The scrappers' stolen cargo, their falsified registries, their records of raids and murder. It was a complete and damning ledger of their crimes. Then the anchorage acted. From emitters all along its hull, it projected a series of complex energy fields. One by one, the scrapper ship's engines sputtered and died, neutralized by a precise frequency wave. Their weapon systems went dark, overloaded by a targeted energy pulse. Their navigation systems failed, fed a stream of garbage data that sent their computers into an endless loop. They were not destroyed. They were disarmed, rendered inert, helpless. A judgment without a single shot fired. On the bridge of his dead flagship, Warlord Kor slammed his fists on his console, his face purple with rage. He was a wolf whose teeth had just been painlessly, perfectly, and permanently removed. His fleet was now just a collection of metal coffins, floating in the heart of the prize he had failed to claim. The light from the anchorage faded its work done. The scrapper fleet drifted impotently. A new message appeared on the Venture's bridge. Adjudication complete. Assets of the guilty are forfeit. Disposition of assets awaits petitioner's verdict. Kalen stared. The anchorage had not just disarmed them. It had, according to its own ancient law, seized their ships and everything in them. And now it was asking him, the petitioner, to be their judge, to decide their fate. The power it was offering him was terrifying. The weight of the crown was heavy indeed. Commander Rostova breathed. "It's giving us their fleet. And their lives," Eris added softly. "We could space them all with a single command." The temptation was there, a dark whisper in the back of his mind. A quick, clean end to a band of murderers. But that was Kor's law, not his. He had petitioned for justice, not for vengeance. Pathfinder Kalen began, his voice firm. "Log the criminal records compiled by the anchorage. Transmit a distress signal on their behalf to the nearest Alliance patrol sector, along with the complete evidence packet. The scrappers will be taken into custody and tried by a jury of their peers." He then turned his attention back to the holographic scale. "As for their assets, he declared their ships are to be impounded. Their stolen cargo is to be catalogued and returned to its rightful owners where possible. Any unclaimed assets will be used to fund a new initiative administered by the Althosian Alliance for the recovery and preservation of pre-diaspora historical sites." He was turning their greed into a tool for the very thing they had tried to destroy. It was a balanced judgment, a fitting one. A debt paid in iron and regret. The scale glowed with a warm, steady light. Verdict is lawful. Verdict is balanced. Verdict is recorded. A sense of finality settled over the bridge. They had survived. They had won. And they had done it without firing a single shot. They had used the law as their only weapon. But Kalen knew this was just the beginning. The anchorage was now his responsibility. He was its petitioner, its speaker, its steward. The galaxy was about to learn that one of its most ancient and powerful legends was real, and that it had a very specific, very impartial, and very unyielding definition of justice. Just as a sense of relief began to settle over the crew, a new alert chimed sharp and insistent. It was Rostova's console. "Commander," she said, her voice strained with a new, deeper anxiety. "Long-range sensors. A fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the nebula." More scrappers. Ares asked, his brief moment of triumph evaporating. Rostova shook her head, her eyes wide. "No. These are military-grade signatures. Perfect formations. Reading. Xylos Hegemony IFF tags. A full battle group, and they're hailing us." Kalen's blood ran cold. The scrappers had been a problem of force. The Hegemony was a problem of law. They were a rigid expansionist power known for using their vast legal code to annex systems and seize assets with perfect, unassailable justification. They were not pirates. They were sharks in tailored suits. The executioners had arrived to replace the thieves. The face that appeared on the main view screen was not the grizzled, chaotic visage of a pirate. It was a woman, her features sharp and patrician, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe military bun. She wore the immaculate dark blue uniform of the Xylos Hegemony, her rank insignia denoting her as an admiral. Behind her, the bridge of her warship was a study in minimalist, brutalist efficiency. There was no warmth, only function. "This is Admiral Nyla Valerius of the Hegemony Reclamation Fleet," she said, her voice as cold and precise as a surgical laser. "You are the survey vessel Venture. You are in unauthorized possession of a pre-diaspora artifact of potentially catastrophic power. By the authority of the Inter-System Armistice and the Artifact Quarantine Treaty, you are to surrender the vessel and the artifact to my custody. Immediately. A cage of law stronger than any steel. Kalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's life support. Valerius hadn't opened with a threat of violence. She had opened with a legal citation. She wasn't here to smash and grab. She was here to foreclose. Admiral Valerius Kalen replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. I am Commander Reyes of the Althosian Alliance. We claimed sanctuary here, and it was lawfully granted. This artifact, the anchorage, is now under our protection. Valerius allowed a flicker of a smile, a predator's expression. Sanctuary Commander, you have awakened a weapon of unknown capacity. Your protection is a threat to the stability of this entire galactic quadrant. The Quarantine Treaty is non-negotiable. It supersedes any claim of salvage or discovery. You are out of your depth, and you are endangering billions of lives. The anchorage has acted only to disarm those who broke the law. Kalen countered, gesturing to the inert scrapper fleet. It has demonstrated no offensive capability, only a capacity for impartial judgment. A judgment you, a civilian academic, now presume to direct. Valerius retorted, her voice hardening. That is the very definition of a rogue state actor. Power down your link to the artifact and allow my specialists to secure it. If you comply, your crew will be treated fairly. If you refuse, you will be designated a hostile entity, and we will take the artifact by force. The velvet glove held an iron fist. Commander Rostova whispered her station, showing the tactical reality. The Hegemony fleet was composed of 12 state-of-the-art warships, a cruiser, 6 destroyers, and 5 frigates. They formed a perfect blockade around the anchorage's entrance. We can't fight them. Their fleet power is overwhelming. The anchorage's shield protected us from scrappers, but against Hegemony-grade disruptors, probability of our survival in a direct confrontation is 0.01%. Pathfinder stated, its blue light seeming to dim. Admiral Valerius's legal position is by a strict reading of the Quarantine Treaty valid. Our most logical course of action is to comply. Kalen looked from his tactical officer's worried face to his AI's cold logic. They were both right. On paper, the choice was clear. Surrender and live. But he had been entrusted with something more than just a ship. He was the petitioner for a power that judged, not destroyed. To hand it over to a faction like the Hegemony, known for twisting laws to justify their conquests, was unthinkable. It would be like giving a courthouse to a mob boss, a choice between a safe death and a dangerous life. On a Hegemony destroyer, a young helmsman watched the silent standoff. His captain was a stern man, a believer in the Hegemony's civilizing mission. The alliance is soft, the captain had told them during the briefing. They let emotion and chaotic ideals dictate their actions. We bring order. We will secure this weapon and ensure it serves the cause of stability, not the whims of a rogue commander. The helmsman nodded, his heart swelling with purpose. He was on the right side of history. Admiral Kalen set his gaze locked on her image. I will not surrender the anchorage. It is not a weapon. It is a legal precedent, and it has already chosen its petitioner. Valerius's expression did not change, but a new coldness entered her eyes. So be it. You have chosen poorly, Commander. Her image vanished from the screen. Multiple energy signatures, Rostova called out. They're not powering weapons. They're deploying something else. Drones. Hundreds of them. On the main screen, swarms of small, sleek Hegemony drones emerged from launch bays, flying in perfect, intricate patterns. They converged not on the Venture, but on the hull of the anchorage itself. They were going to cut the cord. They are attempting to sever our data link. Pathfinder analyzed. The drones are configured as localized EM pulse emitters and quantum signal jammers. If they succeed, we will lose our petitioner status. The anchorage may interpret that as an abandonment of our plea. Can the anchorage defend itself? Arais asked, his hands gripping his console. Unknown, Pathfinder replied. Its previous action was in direct response to a plea regarding a legal transgression. The Hegemony's actions while hostile could be interpreted as a lawful attempt to enforce a treaty. The anchorage may not see a transgression to adjudicate. Valerius was brilliant. She wasn't attacking them, which would trigger the anchorage's self-defense. She was performing a legal and technical maneuver to disarm them, using the artifact's own logic against it. She was challenging Kalen's standing in the court. A war fought with rules instead of bullets. We have to do something, Rostova said, her hands hovering over her useless weapons controls. We can't just let them unplug us. Kalen's mind raced. He couldn't ask the anchorage to destroy the drones. That would be an act of aggression. He needed to make a new plea, a new legal argument. He had to prove to the ancient intelligence that Valerius's actions were in themselves unlawful. He had to beat her at her own game. He turned to the holographic scale which still hovered perfectly balanced in the center of his bridge. A new plea. He said, his voice clear and formal. I, Petitioner Kalen Reyes, bring a new motion before this court. The scale pulsed, gently acknowledging him. The entity known as the Xylos Hegemony, represented by Admiral Nyla Valerius, seeks to forcibly sever the connection between petitioner and court. They do so under the authority of a document they call the Artifact Quarantine Treaty. I petition this court to adjudicate the legality of their claim. I submit that their treaty is not applicable, as the anchorage is not an artifact. It is a sovereign legal entity, a court of law. One cannot quarantine a principle of justice. He wasn't fighting a ship. He was arguing a case. He continued laying out his argument piece by piece. Furthermore, I petition the court to examine the ledger of the Xylos Hegemony itself. Does their history show a pattern of upholding the spirit of the law, or merely the letter? Do they use treaties to foster peace, or as instruments of acquisition? I ask the court to weigh their intent, just as it weighed mine. This was his gambit. He was asking the machine of pure logic to look past the surface of Valerius's claim and into the soul of her civilization. He was asking for a full audit of his enemy. It was an audacious, unprecedented request. A mirror that showed not a face, but a soul. Outside, the Hegemony drones were beginning to attach themselves to the hull. Inside, the holographic scale began to tilt slowly at first, then more rapidly. A low, powerful hum filled the air, far deeper and more resonant than before. The very structure of the anchorage seemed to vibrate with computational effort. Commander, what's happening? Aris asked, his eyes wide. Energy readings are off the scale, Rostova reported, her voice hushed. It's not a shield. It's a sensor pulse, directed at the Hegemony fleet. It's the most comprehensive deep scan I've ever seen. It's reading their data cores, their personnel files, their ship logs, everything. The anchorage was gathering evidence. On the bridge of the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Valerius watched her tactical display in disbelief. Alarms began to chime as her fleet systems were flooded with benign but unstoppable queries from the artifact. It was like being served with a subpoena by a god. What is it doing? Her flag lieutenant asked, his professional calm cracking. It's reading us, Valerius said, a sliver of true fear, touching her for the first time. All of us. The scan lasted for 90 seconds. To the crews of the Hegemony fleet, it felt like an eternity of being seen, of having every shortcut, every moral compromise, every conveniently ignored regulation laid bare. The drones attached to the hull of the anchorage suddenly went inert, their power sources drained in an instant. The weight of history demanded a verdict. Then the anchorage delivered its judgment. It did not fire a weapon. It did not raise a shield. It simply spoke, but not in words, across the Tartarus Maw, and then relayed by an unknown mechanism through every public and military comms network in the surrounding 5 sectors. It broadcast a file. It was a ledger, the ledger of the Xylos hegemony. It showed with irrefutable data, taken from their own ships, every treaty they had twisted, every world they had annexed under false pretenses, every legal maneuver that was in spirit an act of conquest. It laid out in the cold, hard language of numbers and dates a century-long history of expansionism masked as lawfulness. It cross-referenced their own legal code to show hundreds of instances where the hegemony had violated its own principles. It didn't editorialize. It didn't condemn. It just showed the receipts. A truth so bright it burned. On the bridge of the Venture, Kalen and his crew watched in stunned silence as the judgment unfolded. They were witnessing the birth of a new galactic power, one whose weapon was absolute transparency. Aboard the Hegemony flagship, Valerius watched her career, her beliefs, and her entire civilization's carefully constructed image of righteous order dissolve in a cascade of undeniable facts. Her private comms channel lit up with frantic calls from her superiors, from politicians, from a government suddenly finding itself naked in a room full of its rivals. She looked at the image of the anchorage on her view screen, no longer seeing an artifact to be claimed, but a force of nature she could never hope to comprehend. Her authority had vanished. Her legal justification was a ruin. Her fleet was not disabled. It was shamed. A new message appeared on the Venture's holographic interface. The scale was perfectly balanced once more. Plea adjudicated. The plaintiff, the Xylos hegemony, has been found in breach of its own stated laws. Their claim is invalidated. Their standing is revoked. The petitioner's sanctuary is reaffirmed. The court awaits further motions. Valerius's face appeared on their screen one last time. She looked older, defeated. Commander Reyes, she set her voice a dry rasp. You have won. The connection cut. Slowly, majestically, the 12 warships of the Hegemony Reclamation Fleet turned, and one by one jumped to hyperspace, retreating not from a battle they had lost, but from a truth they could not fight. Victory was a whisper, not a shout. In the silence that followed, the true weight of what they had done began to descend upon Kalen. He had faced down a pirate warlord and a hegemony admiral, and had triumphed. But in doing so, he had irrevocably tied his fate and the fate of his crew to this ancient, powerful entity. The news of this encounter would spread like wildfire. The anchorage was no longer a myth. It was a reality, and he was its sole representative. A lone reporter on a news outpost monitoring the public data streams saw the hegemony ledger appear. He began to type, his fingers flying, recognizing the scoop of a lifetime. An unknown power designated Anchorage has issued what appears to be a legal judgment against the Xylos hegemony, broadcasting evidence of alleged treaty violations. The story went viral within minutes. The galaxy was now watching. Commander Aris said, his voice soft with reverence. What have you done? Kalen looked at the holographic scale, the simple, elegant symbol of a power beyond fleets and armies. I've accepted a responsibility, he said. He felt the shift inside himself, the last vestiges of the uncertain academic burning away, replaced by the quiet steel of a steward. He was no longer just discovering history. He was now a part of it. Pathfinder. He ordered, his voice ringing with a new authority. Begin a complete diagnostic of the venture. I want to know exactly how much damage we sustained from that scrapper attack. And open a secure channel to Althosian Alliance Command. It's time we made our official report. The cost of their victory was now becoming clear. The venture was crippled, its port engine a mangled wreck. Repairing it would require resources they didn't have deep within the nebula. The political cost was even higher. By shaming the Hegemony, he had made a powerful permanent enemy. The Alliance would be thrown into a diplomatic firestorm. Scars, both physical and political, were beginning to form. The price of justice is always paid in full. He knew that governments and corporations and cults would soon come flocking to the Tartarus Maw. They would come with petitions and armies, with bribes and threats, each seeking to use the anchorage's power for their own ends. They would see it as a weapon, a tool, a prize. But he knew better. It was a mirror, and it was his duty to make sure that everyone who came before it was prepared to see their own reflection. The holographic ledger on the bridge blinked, displaying a new single entry at the top of a list that was millennia long. It read, Case File 1, UNSV, Venture versus Core Salvage Fleet, Verdict Balanced. A second line appeared just below it. Case File 2, Anchorage versus Xylos, Hegemony Reclamation Fleet. Verdict Balanced. The system was simple, elegant, and utterly impartial. The arrays of the great ship, now warm with purpose, began to cycle down from their active sensor state, their hum dropping to a gentle, patient thrum. They were waiting for the next case. He was a keeper of the law, a shepherd, for a power that remembered everything and forgave nothing that was not paid for. He had sought the past, and instead he had been handed the future, a future built on the unyielding arithmetic of truth. Humanity had once built a god of justice and then forgotten it. Now it would have to learn to pray again. The age of judgment had begun.